Well, Andre was fortunate to have such a long career. There are different eras of Andre the Giant. The Andre the Giant that I grew up watching at 7'4", 450, 70, 80 pounds, whatever it was, I think upheld his own with the best of the big men. You know, the Vaders and the Bam Bam Bigelows and the Terry Gordys. Uh, Andre sort of set the standard for the big man in wrestling. Fans, especially the fans of the I think late '80s and beyond, seem to forget that at one point Andre was damn agile for a guy that size and could really, go in the ring. I did meet Andre. I first met Andre in 1981 before I started training to break into professional wrestling with Dominic. Dominic DeNucci took me to a show at the St. John's Arena in Steubenville, Ohio, and when he told me, he said, "Oh, here comes Andre now," and I looked over. It was a locker room, and I could see Andre's head above the lockers. And I remember thinking to myself, he must be walking on the bench because his head was above the lockers. And when he turned the corner and he was standing there, he took your breath away. I often try to tell people, and you can't describe it in words, how big Andre really was. He was massive big. I mean, like, the kind of big that you look at and say, like, God, those stories I used to read in the Bible and in church about giants is true. Here's one standing in front of me. Hey, this guy was a real giant. And his size was so massive. You can go through, go through the listing of little factoids. For instance, you could pass a silver dollar through his ring. He wore a size 22 shoe, which I could put with my boot on, with my wrestling boot on. I could put my foot completely inside his boot and still had plenty of room left over. He could hold a can of beer in his hand and close his hand around it, and you couldn't see any portion of the can. When Andre wanted to drink, he would always, towards the end, he couldn't go to the ring unless he had 4 bottles of Beaujolais wine, a good French wine. And he never drank it. You think a giant would just grab the bottle and drink it out of the bottle. Thought Andre, he was a Frenchman. And so he would take, it looked like a thimble in his hands, but he would take a glass and pour a small amount like you would in any wine glass and drink. But he was in so much pain, at his size. The average age of giants is 35. Andre died at 46. So he was 11 years older than the average age, which meant that was 11 more years of gravity pulling on that massive body and caused him an extraordinary amount of pain from arthritis and other problems. He would often use crutches in the back. And if you go back and look at WrestleMania 3 at the Silverdome, when they drove them to the ring on the little cart, you can see him holding on to the sides and has to gingerly get into the ring. Andre was in an extraordinary amount of pain, but he was so committed to the WWF and helping to get Hogan over that he wanted to make that appearance. And Andre was an uber professional. What really amazed me about Andre was I told you I met him in 1981, prior to even starting training. 1990, when I first went to the WWF, Dominic told me, the first thing you do when you get there, go say hello to Andre, introduce yourself to Andre. And I walked into his dressing room. Everybody called him Boss. And I walked into his dressing room. As I walked across the floor, I said, "Hey, Boss." And he cut me off. He looked at me and held his finger up like he was thinking, and he stopped and he went, "Dominic DeNucci." He remembered me from meeting me almost 10 years before. And I thought to myself, and I've often thought, in those intervening 10 years, how many people did Andre the Giant meet? That he remembered some punk kid from being with Dominic DeNucci in Steubenville, Ohio. Always amazed me, that he could remember that, because I have difficulty remembering people. I can remember faces, names, or they kill me. And that always impressed me with Andre. Because of the connection with Dominic and Bruno, I always had I won't say an easier time, but I always got a bit easier of a pass with the guys from that previous generation, the Andre the Giants and the Gorilla Monsoons and the Pat Pattersons, those guys, because of that connection of having been trained by Dominic and Bruno. So, Andre was a gentleman. He was a genuinely nice guy, and just an awesome guy. Like I said, took your breath away when you met him. I shook hands with him. The palm of his hand covered both my palm and about halfway up my forearm. That's how big his hands were. And you could tell that if he wanted to rip your arm out of socket and tear you to pieces, he could physically have done it. He was scary strong because he was just so big. But there was always sort of a melancholy that I sensed in Andre that, let's face it, you and I can melt into a crowd anywhere. If you're Andre the Giant, you can't melt into any crowd. Anywhere you go, people are gawking, pointing the finger at you, talking, coming up and bothering you. If you're out in public, if you're not in the privacy of your own home, anytime you step out that door, you're a target. And I think I sensed in Andre that weighed heavily on him. We all value our privacy. In public, Andre could have none.